Hi, everyone. Angela Alston with Angela Alston Astrology. Welcome. Today, we're going to be looking at the creative potential for this week, July 30th through August 5th, 2023. Now, let me share my screen. And I have a wee slideshow that I've put together. We'll go from the beginning. All right, so this week I'm going to be looking at the traditional planets. That would be the sun, the moon, those are the luminaries. Then Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. In traditional astrology, we don't really look at Neptune, Pluto, or Uranus, sorry. But sometimes I will, so it depends how I'm feeling and what the week is kind of revealing to me. But this week I'm going to stay with the traditional planets and luminaries. And so we have Sun, which is traveling through the 7th to 13th degree of Leo. And we have a waxing, a full, and then a waning moon. So a lot's going on with the moon this week. We're going to talk a little bit about the full moon, which is going to be full on August 1st at 11:31 Pacific time. I'm coming at you from Portland, Oregon, or Portland adjacent. Mercury has entered Virgo. And Mercury is very strong in Virgo. It is in Dominion, it's in Chariot, and it's also exalted. And it's going to be traveling through the degrees of 2 to about 10 degrees. It's also going to be going retrograde at the close to the end of the month. So if you have any documents that you need signed, probably do that sooner rather than later in August. Venus, which we talked a lot about last week, is in Leo, and it's going to be revisiting because it's retrograde. It's going to be revisiting the 27th through the 24th degrees of Leo. Mars is also in Virgo, and it's traveling from 12 to about 16 degrees of that sign over the course of this week. Jupiter's in Taurus, traveling 13 to about 14 degrees this week. And Saturn is still in Pisces, still retrograde. And it is kind of creeping along from 548 to about 5 degrees and 24 in Pisces. And so this week we're going to talk about the vibe that's between Leo and Virgo. You have the Lion and the Virgin. And some of those themes, as I was sort of reflecting on what this end of summer vibe really is, what this chord, how it resonates. And one of the things that came to mind is Virgo is so much about process. And Leo is so much about joy. And so enjoy the process, whatever that means to you and wherever that's showing up in your creative work. The process is the journey, right? But when it comes to making art, that's just so true. The end result is something at a certain point that you abandon, right? That you are no longer particularly invested in. You're not giving energy to it in the same way. As an artist, it is the creation, which is really where the magic is, for us. And so this is a week to really sink in and let yourself enjoy the process. Another theme that I thought was to really claim your harvest. Virgo is coming up The season is coming up after Leo, and it's the time of harvest. And so this is kind of preparing us for that. And with Leo, you have that sense of pride in what you're doing. You know, as an artist, that is your art. These are your babies. And so to really claim your harvest and to be proud of what's been born from the fruits of your labor. The third thing that came to mind was don't let perfection, right, which can sometimes be a Virgo shadow. You know, Virgo is so attuned to the process of refining. But don't let perfection become the enemy of creation, right? Leo is about the creation. And the two can certainly work together, but sometimes this desire for perfection, this Virgoan sense of an ideal, can kind of shut you down a little bit. And so this is the week to kind of push through that. If you know that you have those tendencies, it's never going to be good enough. You know, let it be good enough. Get it out there, let it live, because creating is more important than perfection any day. And then finally, be proud of continuous improvement. I'm a huge supporter, a huge believer in continuous improvement. It is my vibe more than anything else. I don't strive for perfection. First of all, I don't believe in perfection. I don't have a lot of Virgo in me. I don't have any, well, we all have it somewhere, but I don't have any planets or key points in Virgo. But be proud of continuous improvement, of how much you have grown, and have that understanding that you're going to be continuing to improve. And that's something that is exciting, and that's something that you can trust in yourself. So that's what I see as sort of some of the big themes that this week is inviting us to. And now I'll talk a little bit about the full moon. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time today talking about the moon because the moon is ever changing. It's going through a lot of signs this week. But since it's a full moon is a time of wholeness. It's a time of completion. And it can be a very creative, fertile time. And this full moon is falling at between 9 and 10 degrees Aquarius. And so some of the Sabian symbol insights, and this is coming from James Burgess and Blaine Bovey, is that it's a popularity that proves ephemeral, right? It's not about gloating over successes, because success is in the eye of the beholder. And it can be in the public's estimation. And the public is, if anything, fickle. And it's not about proving yourself to the public. It's about doing the work. And then Sejin shares with us that not all will understand you. And that's okay. And in fact, it doesn't matter, right? What's important is the understanding that you have of yourself. And so with these notions, let's move into some of the aspects that are in motion this week. I'm going to talk about three main aspects: Sun in square to Jupiter, Mercury in opposition to Saturn, and Mars in trine to Jupiter. So let's start with Sun in square to Jupiter. Two Jupiterian aspects, you know, for this week that have very different flavors. Sun in square to Jupiter. Sun is in Leo, a hot, dry, fixed energy, squaring Jupiter in Taurus, the bull. And Jupiter is also in a fixed sign. And the square is of the nature of Mars. Now, squares can be very creative. They can have creative resolutions. They make themselves known because they poke at you a little bit. And there can be a slight misunderstanding around Jupiter. It is the great benefic, but that it always brings good things. Not always. Sometimes Jupiter can inflate. And when it comes to negative things, it can inflate negative things. And that might be some of the vibe this week that we are going to be coming up against. The sun representing the self, the seat of the ego, I am energy, coming up against the law, right? The long arm of the law. And, Jupiter represents the, not just social agreements, but the actual law, authority, in a way that can be a bit implacable. And this can hit us on personal levels. And it could also, we'll see how it kind of shows up in a mundane way, because it can also impact leaders. And I won't speak too much, about that. But the sun squaring Jupiter, you have two sides that might be kind of digging in. The sun in Leo has a tendency to really think that it is coming from the right place and sometimes the only place. And Jupiter can be, it can be inflationary in that way. And so we might find ourselves getting into discussions that become debates, that become full-blown arguments. And instead of really doing the work to see the other side, there might be the tendency to want to kind of dig in and become. One of the shadow sides of Jupiter is this sense of self-righteousness. And so when you have ego meeting self-righteousness, it's not the prettiest picture. Another potential vibe this week could be parents clashing with their children. There can be some generational wars. Jupiter is representative of children. And so, we want to be kind of careful to make sure that as much as possible, we listen rather than project. And then next we have, and this can go either way depending on how deep your pockets are, but with Leo hitting Jupiter in Taurus, which loves, Taurus is the sign that rules really fine things. You could see some tendencies to kind of be a big spender this week. And in some ways that could be very generous. You might pick up the bill at a lovely dinner with friends. You might buy your lover or a family member or whomever, yourself even, an expensive luxury gift at this time. And again, there's nothing innately wrong with being a big spender. But it's something to be aware is in the atmosphere right now. And if you don't have, the bank account that can really support this, you might want to kind of tuck your credit cards away. Sun squaring Jupiter, there can be issues with husbands. Jupiter is not just the men in your life, that can be Mars, but particularly it's the husband. And so you want to be aware that there could be some family dynamics that come up this week, either with your kids or if you're, partnered with somebody who you identify as your husband. And then the kind of overarching thing could just be issues with anger, inflating conflict, which once this aspect goes away, you might say, what was I so upset about? What were we fighting about after all? And it's not that Sun square Jupiter is, again, innately um, negative, but the square is of the nature of Mars, and that really can be combative. So we want to be kind of aware of that. So we're not wasting energy that we need to be putting towards our work in ways that are unproductive. This can also be a hugely productive energy because you are the warrior, you know, but you want to make sure that you're fighting the right fight, and a fight that, you know, once this energy is dissipated, one that you still believe in afterwards. And now Mercury in opposition to Saturn. Now, the opposition is of the nature of Saturn. Mercury ruling our communication, our thoughts, the written word, in opposition to Saturn can be fairly challenging. You know, it's hard to spin this one positively, but preparation is everything. One of the things that comes to mind with Mercury in opposition to Saturn is writer's block. You know, this sense of, well, the inspiration has flown out the door, you know, and that's when it's not really about the inspiration anymore, right? It's about the perspiration. It's about the showing up and doing it anyway. Saturn can represent our fears. It can be really facing our fears. When something is in opposition, much like with the full moon, it's seeing it clearly. It's not hiding. And so this is a time to really face your fears, to stare them down. Mercury in Virgo is stronger in terms of essential dignity than Saturn in Pisces is. And so it's also a great time to be confronting your inner critic. Now, the planets can show up, they can manifest externally as people and events in your life, but very often they manifest internally. And when Saturn is in opposition to Mercury, there can be a tendency to self-criticize. And here is an opportunity to put the kibosh on that, to confront your inner critic and not back down. Pushing against restrictions. Again, those restrictions might be imposed externally, but more often they're imposed internally. We become our own police, particularly as artists. And with Mercury facing down Saturn, this is an opportunity to really listen, and to listen with a very clear, analytical Virgoan mind that can actually hear what's being said. And Saturn in Pisces can show up in a way that's very passive aggressive. Even within ourselves, we can be kind of passive aggressively undermining ourselves. And so this is an opportunity. This week offers a time to bring that into the light and see how we do that, why we do that, and dismantle it. But it could also be putting your ideas out there and dealing with rejection, right? Saturn can sometimes be the big no. And sometimes rejection happens because it's not ready yet. And just to let, give you the heads up, this could be a week when you are dealing with editors, when you're dealing with people who are gatekeepers in your art in some way, who might be closing doors, but doors that close now will open later. And finally, it's a great time, if an opposition to Saturn can ever be called great, but it's a great time to test your ideas, right? Because if they are ready, if they are baked, if you have done the work, Saturn can also open doors. But during oppositions to Saturn, what you tend to find more often are the restrictions, is the critic. But oppositions, this too will pass. It's something to be aware of and to kind of prepare yourself mentally and emotionally. What is wonderful and what the universe often does is it offers one sort of opportunity, this Mercury in opposition to Saturn. And at the same time, we have a Mars in Virgo trining Jupiter. Mars in Virgo trining Jupiter in Taurus is absolutely lovely. And it's particularly lovely for doing creative work, not just the ideation of it, right? That's Mercury, not just the desiring of it, which is more Venus, but Mars is doing it, showing up, doing the work will pay off. That's the promise of Mars in trine to Jupiter. It may not pay off this week, right? Work is process, but doing the work will pay off. Mars, big effort. To trining Jupiter, big reward. Now is an extraordinary time to put in, just to really put in the elbow grease, as Mars in Virgo can. Mars in Virgo is tireless. It is a tireless worker. And what this is also telling you is that you have everything you need, right? That's really important. You have everything you need to get this project done, to get this work done. And then inspiration, Jupiter, comes with perspiration, right? Mars. But if you seek the inspiration, it will be there for you. But you have to seek it through doing the work, through effort, right? Applied effort. And so we have kind of a lot going on to kind of put in the creative stew this week. We have Mars in trine to Jupiter, which is the antidote, perhaps, to Mercury in opposition to Saturn, because that can be harsh, right? And Mars in trine to Jupiter can be very, very sweet, very fertile ground. But be careful, we do have the Sun in square to Jupiter as well, which, if we're able to avoid the more confrontational and negative aspects, can really key in with this Mars in trine to Jupiter vibe as well, because it's big effort and big faith in yourself. So that's what we have this week happening. The Sabian symbol, the attribution, and then the image, that beautiful image, is from Little Fish Design UK. And here's a link to their Etsy shop. I hope you dance your dance and sing your song and write your play or poem, and that you do so with utter joy this week. And if you ever need anything, please feel free to contact me at AngelaAlstonAstrology@gmail.com. I am here for you 100%.